Where do you think you get your hilarious sense of humor from?
Football.
Football. That is the correct answer. That is straight CTE.
Mike Webster, a brilliant athlete, honored by the NFL Hall of Fame, died aged 50.
My CTE acting up. Wait a minute for a moment. I don't know nothing you're talking about.
Webster's behavior became increasingly strange. He became lethargic and angry. He threatened to kill strangers. When his teeth fell out, he stuck them back in with super glue, and he zapped himself with a taser gun to try to help him sleep.
Imagine a disease that hides in plain sight for years, even decades, slowly building momentum as it erodes away your sense of reality and everything you are. When you think about it like that, you start to realize CTE is way scarier than you think. When we first started to learn about CTE, most of us took it super serious. But over time, through an abundance of memes and captions, we started to make light of a really deadly disease. And look, bro, I'm not here to try to guilt trip you or act like this is somehow your fault. It's not, and that ain't the point of this video. Jokes are not just cool, I think they're necessary. We need jokes. They help us cope with a troubling reality. They help us gain perspective. Like, some of the best observations literally come from comedians. Jokes only really become a problem when they're our primary source of education on the topic. And I just wanted to make a video that gives this topic the level of seriousness that it actually deserves. To deal with the topic honestly without reducing it to a joke or going the other way and over sensationalizing it into the dirt, going crazy conspiracy theory, pointing fingers all over the place. I want to talk about CTE without those elements. Will I thread that needle? Hopefully I'll get close. But make no mistake, this is heavy. People have lost their lives, not to mention all the suffering and how that trickles down to their family and loved ones, having their kids remember them in ways nobody wants to be remembered. And in the midst of all of that, I just imagine being alone, suffering through all of this and feeling like you're slowly losing your mind. Then the second you hop on the internet searching for normalcy or maybe some help, all you see is people making light of your darkness as your grip on reality tears itself apart.
Think I got CT?
Shoot, I don't think you got CT.
Do you think you got CT?
I don't think I got CT, but we'll never know till we die.
What do you think about CT? What is CT?
ACT is like basically like when you forget. Or no?
Chronic traumatic encephalopathy is a progressive disease associated with physical contact that causes the brain to bang against the inside of the skull. That's the part I think most people understand. In CTE cases, that repeated head trauma causes an abnormal accumulation of a protein called, wait, what is it called? When I was reading this on the screen, I mean, it just jumps out. The irony of how close the protein tau in the name Tua is pretty crazy. If you're new here, Tua Tagovailoa is a good quarterback, not great, but good. And since he's coming to the NFL, he's actually had some of the scariest concussions that we've actually seen on a football field. CTE conspiracies and jokes run pretty rampant, as even his personality has honestly seemed to change. But that could just be from him getting a little older and getting fed up. But it's one of them things where you can't even blame people for drawing the parallel. So I wanted to stop real quick and acknowledge that. But now that we got that out, let's get back to it. Tau completely disrupts brain function by damaging nerve cells and blood vessels in the brain. This buildup forms what they call neurofibrillary tangles, which block neural pathways and cause the brain cells inside those pathways to malfunction and die.
Traumas that was like we go through as people.
It's like brain damage, right?
I don't want to say you're brain damage because you can't live with your brain damage.
But not like brain damage. But
it's literally brain damage, bro. CTE hits you with mood swings, aggression, depression, memory loss, and bad judgment. In the long run, it can push you to full-blown dementia. And by the long run, I mean like in your 30s. That's why whenever an ex-player like says something dumb, they get hit with the, oh, that's the CTE joke. And like I said with the jokes, man, some of them are funny. Like when Michael Irvin did the
CTE acting up.
I laughed, it was hilarious. But we just gotta make sure we separate in the jokes from the reality. And I'm here to tell you that in this situation, the reality is a whole lot darker. No. See, the scariest part is when you combine those symptoms I just named with possibly the worst symptom of them all. One of the worst components of CTE is actual damage to the amygdala. That's the part of your brain that regulates fear. That's the part of your brain that regulates fear and then helps you to learn from bad situations. When it breaks, you stop recognizing external danger, becoming less and less able to make rational decisions. But here's the creepy part. You lose that sense of external fear, but it doesn't shut down internal fear. So people with advanced levels of CTE oftentimes get stuck inside their own head. Their inner fears get louder as their judgment gets weak, and they start to deal with that fear in less and less rational ways as time goes on, as they slowly lose their grip on reality. And this super terrifying concoction of symptoms often lead to the exact same type of outcomes.
I don't know, like the building in front of me, I just saw someone jump off the building.
Okay, what is the address?
I'm in Oceana 500 Collins Avenue, and the building is like right in front of me.
Is it across the street or?
It's across the like water, the canal. It's like on 163rd. Oh my God.
I'm looking at your video. Did they jump into the water? Did they jump?
They jumped into the pool. They jumped off the balcony into the pool. It must have been at least from like the 10th floor or something. Somebody was screaming, saying, "Help me."
Dream big, shoot for the stars, stay focused, never give up. And one more thing. To all the kids from Chesterfield County, I'll be watching for the next star to be born.
What you just heard was a 911 call placed in September of this year. The person who jumped was later identified as former NFL running back and Bengals legend Rudy Johnson. He was only 45. At the height of his career, rushing for 1,400 yards a season, Rudy was the type who wasn't just thinking about himself. He started a foundation that provides assistance to families and kids, promoting self-sufficiency and self-reliance. The foundation eventually helped to fund the first football team for Clark Montessori High, a school located in Cincinnati where he played. This entire area was becoming way more self-reliant, but they got there with help from guys like Rudy. He had loved ones who desperately wanted to help, the way he helped Clark Montessori years before. But while they were willing, they didn't have the means, because the help he needs currently does not exist. According to his family, Rudy had been struggling with severe mental health issues, believed to be brought on by CTE. But currently the condition just can't be diagnosed in a person while they're still alive. So this obviously creates challenges in terms of finding a treatment, a terrifying reality for these players and their families. This ain't even the only example of this playing out this year, 2025. I ain't talking about 10 years ago. I ain't talking about 20 years ago. I'm talking about this year. Recently, I've been covering some shorter news stories, and one of the stories I covered was the story of Doug. I go into great detail over the course of 2 videos, and I'll link them at the end for those who are interested, but allow me to sum it up for you. Doug, like Rudy, was struggling with severe mental health issues, expected to have come from CTE. Doug was a fire running back, a 2-time Pro Bowler, but by his mid-30s, he jumped out of a 2nd-story window. Then he punched the wall of the mental institution he was trying to escape from, and then stood there dancing covered in his own blood. So both Doug and Rudy jumped from high places, perhaps because they could not process the external fear of falling from that height. However, the reason that each of them jumped seemed to be due to internal fears. With their judgment greatly impaired, they dealt with those fears in ways that a rational brain would not have condoned. These are real life illustrations of why this concoction of symptoms is so damn scary. What if we could have helped them escape from the prisons of their minds? What if we could diagnose them and potentially treat them? What if they didn't have to die? Answers to those questions are beginning to form as recently as this year. So maybe, just maybe, actual help is on the way. You ever think about things that you're too scared to look up? Like, how do we develop any surgeries at all? How many people have knowingly and unknowingly sacrificed their lives in the name of research? How many have inadvertently saved millions of lives? We didn't have to live through most of that stuff, But conditions like CTE have a way of sending us back to the dark ages, where somebody comes down with a condition that'll be easily treatable in just a few years. But presently we got nothing. So in droves, we just have to sit back and watch people go. But the sacrifices of some of these athletes won't be in vain, as more CTE diagnosed brains are being studied every single day. What I'm trying to say is there's hope. Research is progressing. Here's what the latest advancements in the research fields are saying. Researchers just found that people with CTE had DNA mutations that did not appear in others who took plenty of hits but never actually developed the disease. This gives researchers something to look for in the mutation. They're starting to realize that is actually a tell. So there's a deeper biological chain reaction that's taking place in the brain. And if you can track DNA damage early, that could be a way to detect CTE in living people, which is the first true step to being able to treat it. Another study looked at high school and college athletes and found early signs of neuron loss, inflammation, and messed up blood vessels in the brain. The thing is, this occurred before any classic CTE markers would actually show up. So as they can start to identify this information early, they might soon be able to recognize it before it's fully formed in the brain, which would allow them to then do something about it. All right, this is the last one. There's also a new imaging project that can lock onto the tau buildup in the brain. If, and that's if, this actually works, it can become the first tool that lets doctors actually see CTE in real time in a human brain. So essentially, we do have a little ray of light trying to shine down into a cave of darkness. The fact that we're making progress on potential cures is cool, but why are today's athletes getting CTE when the athletes of the past never seemed to? Okay, that's actually a good question. Today's athletes seem way more susceptible to injuries in general and conditions like CTE. But like, why all them dudes running around in leather helmets didn't have all these same CTE problems? Allow me to answer your question with a question. Are you sure that they didn't? Chronic traumatic encephalopathy ain't new. It just grew up and changed its name. Let's talk about the forgotten history of CTE, or as it used to be called, punch drunk syndrome. Back in the 1920s, there was this weird phenomenon with pro boxers, something nobody could really explain yet. Bro, these were tough men, hardened by years in the ring. So why all of a sudden did they seem so fearful and emotional? They started acting different, fighting different. Even the gaits of their walks would drastically change. Coaches chalked it up to fatigue or too much time in the ring. There was definitely something much deeper going on. One doctor noticed the pattern. Dr. Harrison Martland, a pathologist by training, spent time studying 300 brain injuries from people who died from head trauma. Bro, it's crazy with these doctors. They get used to this type of stuff. He can cycle through 300 brains without batting an eye. What got his attention was the fact that in several cases, there were no skull fractures, no big visible brain damage. But there was these tiny microscopic bleeds in the brain. He started to realize that these micro bleeds looked a lot like what was happening to boxers who took years of punishment in the boxing ring and then started showing strange neurological symptoms. These were the fighters people were calling punch drunk. So he wrote a paper, literally called Punch Drunk, which ultimately became the first real medical evidence that repeated hits to the head could slowly break down a person's brain from the inside out. In that paper, he documented 23 boxers, 5 of which he'd examined himself. He showed how the symptoms could start right there in the ring, and then he showed how they could get worse, way worse, over time. Shaky hands, balance problems, slurred speech, memory loss, full-on cognitive decline. This had landed some fighters in mental asylums. People thought they had up and lost their mind. Before Martland, the medical world barely acknowledged any of the issues these fighters was having. Fighters would go to doctors complaining about the symptoms and they'd get told nothing was wrong. It was all in their heads. I can imagine Martland sitting there like, exactly, fool. But even after Martland, people like Mike Webster suffered tremendously. Like, you can't even imagine what this dude went through, what his family went through, and they had no idea what was going on with him. And then decades later, people like Rudy Johnson's, like the Doug Martins, Aaron Hernandez, Junior Seau, Demarius Thomas, Vincent Jackson. Bro, these dudes was going through it, and they wasn't just forgetting some stuff. And I'm hoping this video could let people understand that dog is way deeper than that. And I think as fans, we do need to understand that. And to the players, bro, y'all need to understand it too.
So I feel like CTE could be a bunch of different things, but
Even after Dr. Martlin made his discoveries, outside the boxing world, people still didn't take this serious. Even after we've lost so many legends, it still took the NFL till 2016 to finally acknowledge that football and CTE are just intrinsically linked. Today, the general public has much more information on CTE than at any other time in history. And still, it tends to get downplayed by the NFL, NFL players, and fans of the NFL. And that's because all three parties have something in common. We all have a vested interest in this brutal yet beautiful game that we love. And as I started to really think through this topic, I wrestled with this because I love football. I played football in high school and in college. To this day, every Sunday, like clockwork, I wake up, read my Bible. I either go to church or study scripture on my own up until noon. When 12 o'clock hit, I strap up. It's football time. Me and the boys click up in a party chat and talk some nonsense. I usually have a couple beers and a really good time. Outside of that, it's just adult stuff, work and responsibilities. But it's cool because I get to start my week with a nice Sunday. And football is a massive part of that, not just for me, but for people all over this country, but actually at this point all over the world. So like I said, I didn't make this video to petition people to stop watching football or nothing like that. I really just wanted to talk more deeply and actually honestly about a topic. When we want to protect something, we tend to just avoid the reality, and we do that by ignoring or downplaying things. So I still love football, and I still plan to watch, and I still plan to enjoy it, just like most of y'all, and just like the players still plan to play it. And as the research continues to move forward, for now I guess the question is, are there real options to reduce concussions and as a byproduct reduce CTE without fundamentally changing the nature of the game? Do those options exist, and if so, what are they? So some critics think the only change that needs to be made is to move away from helmets altogether. Now, when this one first hits your ears, it might sound like the dumbest idea of all time. It's counterintuitive, but I think that I can follow their logic. There's actually some evidence that this could be effective. For example, before people had the safety net of modern birth control, before that was invented, people tended to be a lot more careful and a whole lot less promiscuous. So the idea of removing the safety net of the helmet is that players will naturally move smarter on the field, stop leading with their heads, and hit with less force. However, the counter argument is way stronger. All you gotta do is look at our European cousins. Rugby players don't wear helmets at all, and they're said to have, on average, 3 times the concussion rate of American football. Ironically, bro, many of the advances that we've actually made in CTE research are due to cases found in rugby players. So the no helmet idea, you can throw that in the trash. Like all of the other suggested solutions turn the game into a completely different sport. We've already seen rules like defenseless receiver reward quarterbacks for making stupid decisions and leading their guys into a hit. So is there anything that can actually be done? Honestly, it's not a ton, but here's the best set of solutions I can come up with without fundamentally changing the sport. First off comes awareness. At every single level, all the way from Pop Warner to the NFL, players/parents, depending on the level, should be required to learn about standout cases of CTE so that they are aware. This is a free country and people are allowed to do risky things. Bro, astronauts risk higher probabilities of certain type of cancers due to space radiation. But the key is you have to be fair with people and make sure they fully understand all of the risks that are involved. It should be the same thing with football. Before you strap on a helmet, and again, reiterate this, at every level, Let people know exactly what the risks are. And that's if they still decide to play, at that point they have the freedom to choose to do that. This would protect against guys being blindsided by the condition or playing the sport for 20 years and not understanding the condition. This way players don't think that CTE is just occasionally forgetting a couple details. Secondly, and the only other thing you can do without fundamentally changing what the game is, and when I say what you can do, I'm talking like right now, like something that can be implemented as soon as next season. It's time to look like Megamind, bro. The effectiveness of Guardian Caps is highly debated, as they've shown mixed results when it comes to preventing concussions. The NFL says they reduce concussions by 50%, but there's some other studies that seem to contradict that. I briefly looked through these, and there's two things that account for the vast majority of these mixed results. One, NFL bias. They pretty much always have people with vested interest in the league who perform their studies, and they pretty much always get numbers that are higher or lower than everybody else, depending on which is more beneficial to them. So there's that. But the other factor has to do with the fact that the high schools and colleges they conduct these outside studies for don't actually use the same model of Guardian Cap that the NFL does. The NFL uses this, high schools use this. This Virginia Tech study shows over and over that when you put the NFL Guardian Cap versus the one out in the wild, the NFL cap is a whole lot better and really effective at reducing concussions. Is it 50%? Maybe not quite 50, but nonetheless, you can see they are effective. So once you look at this, the next step becomes obvious. Make it mandatory for everyone to wear. The players and the fans will complain, but listen to me, dog. It's only aesthetics. We talking about aesthetics versus life. This is not a competition. Not to mention, as you implement them, they're gonna make them look better over time. Plus your eyes will adjust. It's gonna look a little weird, but we'll get used to it. And if they can reduce a concussion by up to 50%, which would reduce CTE by a certain percentage, how can you sit there and say it's not worth it? Under this system, yes, there'll still be players who end up developing the deadly disease. But because we made sure they were fully aware, they can be as prepared as you can be. Along with their preparation on the back end, the league also needs to be prepared. I get so tired of these leagues just ignoring problems and not developing solutions for them. It's the same thing college football did with NIL. They knew it was coming, they just didn't do nothing. Same thing with the NFL when it comes to these concussions. They didn't even admit that there was a link between concussions and football till 2016. Bro, they been knew. Bro, Martland was working on this stuff in the 20s. So, since we know that this is a high probability, can we please develop some systems to actually help, right? Actually help people navigate the issue if it arises. And if they pass due to these symptoms, can we please do something to take care of their families, medical expenses, funeral arrangements? Bro, you guys are so rich. I'm just talking about human decency. All those things are doable, but it's gonna take the people in power to do something with that power besides just enriching themselves. And honestly, now that I say it out loud, yeah, I admit that's a big ask. All right, let's close this out, bro. Right now, the loudest stuff about CTE is jokes and memes and stuff like that. And like I said, that's cool, but it ain't the whole story. Not even close. The real story goes back over 100 years. Boxers, football players, soldiers, and more who had to pay a heavy price that they never saw coming. We might call a dude trash in the party chat from time to time, but that's just talk. Like, they ain't really coming from a real place. At the end of the day, I think most of us respect the risk that these dudes take every time they step on the field. And I just want us to remember that no matter how much money they getting, got some pocket watches out there, but no matter how much money dude is getting, he's still a human with a 5-pound helmet on his head. A helmet that ain't gonna protect him from the scariest injury in the game, a brain injury. CTE. So I'm not saying stop watching or stop joking or having fun. I'm just saying, in the midst of us having fun, let's keep some humanity in these CTE conversations. And hopefully we don't become a whole generation of completely detached social media bots who have a skill for seeing the meme and everything, but lack the heart to see the humanity in anything. Alright man, I hope y'all enjoyed the video. I know it was kind of like a really heavy topic. I've been doing a lot of short form stuff that was more news based, and I wanted to try to tackle something that was a little more nuanced. Give me your feedback in the comments, even if you want to beat me up. Other than that, man, I hope y'all enjoy the rest of your day. God bless, and yeah, I'll catch y'all in the next one.